I ran this game for my dad, my stepmother, and my stepbrother. I ran a module, don't remember which, but made up some side quests for flavor. This happened during one of their side quests. The party came across a shipwreck on the edge of the island they were on. Their original mission was to investigate a cave and bring back these special healing mushrooms, but the allure of the shipwreck is much stronger. After succeeding on a few investigation checks and history checks, they discovered this ship belonged to a band of entertainers, famous for their tamed owlbear that could do tricks. I think you can see where I'm going with this. Well, my stepbrother found a journal detailing its training routine and discovered that the owlbear was hurt by its trainers. Stepbro was pissed. He wanted to kill all the entertainers, but it looked like someone or something beat him to it. They found all the entertainers littered across the ship. They also found a large metal cage with some of the bars missing. When they got off the ship, they were confronted by an owlbear. An insight check later, they realized it was the same one that was hurt by the trainers. My bro decided that this poor creature was just misunderstood and needed a new home. Yeah, what did you expect? They're going to attack the poor, adorable, defenseless, sad murder monster? Bro, we made velociraptors cute, okay? Owlbears are easy. So he asked me if he could roll an animal handling check to show the creature he was friendly. Nat 20. After earning the affection of the creature, he asked to adopt the owlbear. Another nat 20 later, and we had a new party member, Allie the owlbear. And I had to rescale all the fights to include a hulking owlbear on their side. Oh, it's not like the owlbear scales, okay? Give it a couple levels and it'll end up like Trinket in Legend of Vox Machina. And honestly, I think the extra encounter work is worth it for a story your family's gonna remember forever. Before I begin, I just wanted to say your narrations and tips have kept me company on some really long and lonely drives from work to job recently, so thank you for all the work that you do. Thank you for watching. This incident happened a few months after the initial wave of the virus back in 2020. My roommate and I have been talking about how much we missed our days in D&D. We had our first campaign fall apart a few months prior. And together, we decided it was time to try again. He decided to DM a run of Descent into Avernus, and invited a few of our roommates to the game. The initial campaign begins with 5 players. Me playing a satyr named Puck. Wait, hey, Puck, I get that reference! I read Shakespeare! When I was in 8th grade and was forced to by my English class, but still, I read it, okay? We had 2 female roommates, an old wood elf pirate lady in a warforge, and 2 male roommates, a tiefling noble and a dwarven sex worker barbarian, I think? I don't think their class ever really came up, but that former tidbit certainly did. Like, my boyfriend at the time, who did not live with us, would watch us play and eventually joined us as an elven archer. One note to keep in mind, the male roommates behind the tiefling and the dwarf were dating in real life, and even shared the same room within the 900 square foot house the 6 of us shared, which means, oh god, dating your roommates, that never goes wrong. Ever! There's a reason why I live alone. In my apartment. At the black edge of void beyond the sea of reality. I like being alone, okay? The first session would reveal a handful of issues. It was clear we had a few problem players on our hands. The first to reveal himself was the dwarf, who would constantly rush into battles and try to seduce NPCs through uncomfortable roleplay. This was all well and good, easily something that could have been worked through above table, but the worst offense by the guy was the fact that he would leave the table during combat right before his turn. Bro, this It's one thing to run to the bathroom. It's another to finish an exam, make guacamole fresh, and a glass of milk, and return to the table nearly 45 minutes later with both of these things in hand. And with none to share. This sounds like I'm being specific to one instance. I'm not. This happened every other session for nearly 6 months. The Warforged, whose backstory was something along the lines of being built for a war that already ended, was clearly experiencing a lot of character bleed and constantly cried at the table. Most of the character arc involved finding a sense of purpose and belonging among a world that makes you feel like you've no meaning for existence, which is a wonderfully thought-provoking and satisfying arc. The problem was, I think she struggled with a lot of these issues in real life and would confuse conflicts between player characters as conflicts worth fighting about above the table. There were many times she would hold grudges for differing in-game strategies and viewpoints, and these grudges often involved a lot of nasty back talk behind the backs of other players. The campaign pushed forward, descending into Avernus and losing the DMPC meant to be a buffer in our first Battle of Hell. Meanwhile, I happened to come across an above-table inconsistency that would lead to a lot of tragic consequences. Tiefling began to say that he was going to certain places, the mall, classes, etc., and be gone for hours. However, our shared location would place him elsewhere, usually at the same 2 or 3 houses.
What? Crispy number 5, what are you doing? You're supposed to be solving this crime. You're just staring at everything. Can you talk to me?
My suspicion was piqued, but I did nothing for the time being.
Hey, what's on your phone? Hey!
Until one day, I caught him taking a contraceptive from the house's contraceptive community jar.
I think I figured out what happened here. Oh, how? You just been standing there staring at stuff. What did you solve? The bumblebee is going to another daisy. What does that even... Dude, that doesn't make any sense. He's obviously cheating on him, man. I mean, come on. Yeah, I got that, but your analogy sucks. It's not like the bees are boning the flowers. Dude, I know we're asexual, but like, man, that's bad even for us. Are you kidding me? Are you serious?
You're lying.
Oh my god,
You're lying to me. You're lying to me.
You're dumb.
You're not telling the truth.
Yeah, anyway, he was taking contraceptives out the door. Now, as a reminder, his boyfriend shared a room with him. So where was he going? I brought it up to my boyfriend and the DM on a double date we were having shortly after, who both told me to leave it alone for fear of spreading misinformation. It became fairly obvious, however, that something was amiss. Tiefling began berating Dwarf during sessions to no avail. When Dwarf would say anything in character, Tiefling would immediately ruin his fun and reprimand him for being embarrassing. He would constantly call him annoying and immature, even when Dwarf was regarding the rules of the table. This tension continued to build until it gave out one night around December, when Dwarf blurted out the name of a boss we were facing despite the DM not revealing that information. After some questioning, he revealed that he had looked up the end of the campaign and had been driving our decisions to get us to the ending that we desired.
Betrayal!
I hate dudes like that.
Betrayal!
This angered the DM, reasonably, and Tiefling to the point of calling the session early. The two boyfriends began fighting loudly in their shared room long into the night. The following night, Tiefling began lying more and more about his whereabouts, and by the time I caught a glimpse of a dating app on his phone at the end of the month, I had seen enough. I let Dwarf know of the infidelity in January. Meanwhile, Warforged begins getting frustrated when DM and I hang out outside D&D. DM and I share a room, so this is oftentimes unavoidable. She begins letting herself in to vent and cry about real-life situations, sometimes as early as 2 or 3 in the morning. When we would lock our doors or go to classes together, we were in the same major at the same school. She would send passive-aggressive messages in the house chat or make others confront our behavior for her. I tried to be as inclusive as possible, as I've had my fair share of struggles with making friends and finding purpose in my life, but she began slandering my musical skills and accomplishments to others, believing these people wouldn't immediately turn around and tell me everything that she said. I quickly lost sympathy for her. Dwarf and Tiefling stopped dating, but continued to share a room. Send me to hell, please. I prefer hell. 3 weeks later, they began to date again. Tiefling continued to cheat and then repeat the cycle 2 or 3 times. One night during a small get-together hosted at my place, the drinks and marijuana were, they were going strong. Both Dwarf and Tiefling, who weren't necessarily invited but attended due to living there, got a little wasted too. They began to fight loudly in the front yard, much to the horror of the other roommates. Neighbors began to stand outside to gander? Gander? It's gawk, right? Oh, it is gander. Oh my god. Well, the more you know. Anyway, the neighbors are gandering at what was going on. The cops received more than one noise complaint. And then the fight got physical. Tiefling goes inside to decompress, and I am sent to deal with the situation. The sudden massive cops and Dwarf, who is trying and failing to drive his truck and flee the scene. I was high, I was panicked, trying to hide my altered state and provide what information I could on the altercation. DM made the decision to kick both Tiefling and Dwarf from the campaign, with Tiefling's character gifted to his girlfriend at the time, and Dwarf getting eaten alive by a rock. The rest of the party, despite the setbacks, made it all the way through to the end of the campaign, with Puck receiving the Sword of Zariel and convincing her to lift Elturel. The majority of the party is still close today, with DM, both Elves and I currently in a campaign together. However, you'll notice that a certain problem player is missing. Apparently, a lot of the inner turmoil Warforged was experiencing was consistently sleeping with Wood Elf's ex-boyfriend while they were still together! Ah! I mean, that sucks. It's terrible. This pattern would repeat itself many times and many times afterwards, but that's another story. Again, thank you for your hard work. I did my best to shorten my story and get rid of some asides, one involving Dwarf stealing a car, which would be a separate tale in itself, but if it's still too long, I completely understand. Dude, this was perfect, and if you got those next stories, I'd be happy to take them. Let's talk about the in-game problems first. Leaving the table is okay in my book, but you should try to do it at a time that doesn't inconvenience the rest of the group. Like, try your best to leave the table right after your turn. People who wait until right before their turn to leave the table. Like, what are you doing to me, man? Why? That's hardly the biggest issue, though. A major problem for me is Tiefling and Dwarf's constant fighting. Even before it got physical, that kind of toxic environment just is gonna ruin the game for you. D&D, all TTRPGs, they're supposed to be fun. It would be impossible for me to have fun if I have to listen to two people fighting like that. It just bums me out, even if I'm not the subject of the fight. And once it gets physical, yeah, that is unacceptable. The DM was right to kick them. In terms of outgame problems, man, it's not the kind of cheating we usually talk about, but it's still real bad nonetheless. Dude, if you want to bone someone else, just break up with who you're with. It's not that complicated, right? So I'm a long-time player, more like a long-time DM, and play games on and off. I was lucky enough to convince one of my in-person players to try DMing herself, and she took it like a duck to water. This is not the problem. She's so good at DMing that I've been reminded how fun it is to be a player. The only problem with this campaign is that we meet once a month, if that, and I wanted more playtime as a player, so I decided to go to the one place I knew there would be an abundance of games. The official, state-endorsed LFG Discord. This was my first mistake. Eventually, I found a game ad that I was interested in, and it said to be all edges of all D&D realities, so I thought it'd be perfect for me. I contacted the DM and asked him about it. He asked me when I was available, I told him, then he just sent an invite for a Discord. No other questions or screening. That was red flag number 1. But not a super deal breaker for me. At this point, I was getting desperate, as this was like my 4th time doing this. I get into the server and notice that I'm the last guy to fill out the group, hot on the heels of another player that had just joined. This made a party of 4. Most of us got a little antsy and decided to make characters early, and the DM said he'd allow Homebrew, but just run it by him. I wasn't using any Homebrew, so I was okay. But our bard was using some official-looking Homebrew subclass that's based on Alan Wake, or something, which, by the way, that's a sick idea for a bard subclass. Side note, I love Alan Wake. Now, if someone makes a wizard based on Jesse Faden from Control, my life will be complete. The other person who was actively talking was brand new and also rolled up a rogue. So far, so good, except for the last player, who we'll call Bob. He wasn't interacting with us. We were a week out from session 0, and we had no idea what this person was going to be playing, or who they were, or anything. The only thing we knew was that they were using an unspecified Homebrew class. Red flag. A week passes and session 0 comes around. We all get in a call, talk for a little bit, and leave. It was maybe 30 minutes max, but I chalked up to everyone kind of being new with each other, and we had been creating our characters, so there was no need to do that during session 0. Bob still hadn't posted anything about this character. The day after, I decided to mention them and ask them what they were going to play as. This is when they dropped the Homebrew class on us. He says that he made it himself, and it was based on a character from this Fate anime. This is either going to be the most poorly made or most unbalanced thing ever. Or both.
I present my custom class, the Ghost Samurai! With the Ghost Samurai, I have unlimited power. Any enemy that stands before me, I can kill in a heartbeat. Skeleton! Dragon! They all fall before me. And now I will use my overpowered synergies to achieve unlimited strength! Hey man, not for me to question your class of questionable cultural background, but Like, have you playtested this? Because, you know, your stuff might not work the way you... Have I achieved unlimited power? I feel like it's not working.
Me, being a longtime DM, looked over it with curiosity, and that's when it started going downhill. First, there was no specifications on health, proficiency, starting equipment, spellcasting stats, or anything you'd find in a class. Second, this class revolved around a pool of points called creation points. It started at 1d8 plus your wisdom modifier at level 1, then went 1d8 up per level. Not particularly bad, but odd to say the least. Third, this was marked as a half-caster class, but only had access to spells level 5 or lower, and as far as I could understand, to cast a spell, he had to use creation points based on the level or something. Fourth, at level 1, this person could recreate any weapon he touched perfectly at will. Fifth, he could choose to make these created weapons into marbles? Not sure, the writing was very bad and hard to understand, and use it as a projectile using his dexterity modifier. Sixth, at level 1, he could touch any weapon or armor and make it +1 weapon or armor at will for free. Seventh, at level 2, he could choose a fighting style, and he homebrewed up one of his own. It added his wisdom modifier to his AC, as long as he wasn't wearing heavy armor. 8th, at level 3, he could start reducing damage with his creation points, or at least I think, as his writing went off the deep end here, and it was genuinely just hard to read. 9th, at level 5, he could switch between having the champion fighters improve critical, up his base damage based on his creation points, or as a reaction, add 3 to his armor class that stayed until he switched over to another stance. Thankfully, the DM refused to let him use it. Bob then proceeded to have the world's biggest hissy fit over how the DM agreed to let him use it in DMs, and that no part of it was overpowered because he would not abuse it. Yeah, because I like giving annoying dudes loaded guns and just trusting, yeah, they're not gonna shoot me, right? He said he'd only use light armor and use a heavy crossbow. He also insisted that +1 weapons are basically tier 1 upgrades that don't make us overpowered or anything, missing the point that removes the issue of non-magic resistance and that everyone else was starting with base level gear. I ended up leaving after that because if this is how Bob reacted when being told no about that, I did not want to see what would happen in-game. Look, doing something flawed, that's one thing. People mess up, they make mistakes all the time. But the mark of a bad person is how they respond to the criticism. And obviously, criticism can be bad. It can be rude, but that's not what I'm reading here. The DM gave some very reasonable critiques of an extremely poorly written class. And that is something that should be listened to. I mean, come on, man. It's game balance. It's like someone correcting your grammar. It's not personal. Don't take it personally. It might seem harsh leaving this group so suddenly after what Bob did, considering, I mean, he's just one person, right? It's not like the whole group was acting like that. But on the other hand, is it really worth the risk? I mean, these games aren't something that you're playing with friends. They're not something you've been doing for years. These are random LFG groups, alright? The only thing that separates them from my random Helldiver teams is the fact I might see their faces. That's it. And look, if people are trifling Helldivers, I got no problem leaving. Same thing goes for online D&D. I play as a lawful good paladin in a chaotic table, and before you say anything, it's for laughs. Basically, he was called in his sleep by his god, and it told him that he needed to help this group of idiots who had come into his village. And then it really happened, so my paladin was like, alright. He's a kind of lawful good who follows God and what God believes is good. We're all friends at the table, and DM is super gentle, but he's also really afraid to make people feel weird since it's his first campaign DMing. Considering it, he was kind of back on the idea, but after the entire party decided to rob a bank and use me as a distraction, my character did not explode in a monologue or try to do PvP, but simply asked for the party to share their earnings with the poor, everyone accepted the idea. My entire party is bisexual. And my character was pretty fine with it, but he was always shy about relationships and wanted to stay single because God needed him. At least that was his excuse. And it was like that for some sessions until he met an NPC who presented as male and was a knight that believed in the same God as Paladin, and it was an automatic match. The party would joke about how they were cute together, and my paladin would shyly dismiss everything. Really cute roleplay that everyone enjoyed. I mentioned in private with the paladin's best friend, a chaotic good warlock, that he was actually gay and deeply in the closet, and I was planning to reveal it with the knight NPC as a key to his discovery. And since my character's sexuality was a fun mystery, I asked the warlock player to keep it secret from the DM so he could be surprised too. Some more sessions happened, and we were tasked to find the missing daughter of a noble. The noble was a really annoying NPC NPC, but our party was in crippling debt, since basically everyone had a gambling addiction, so we ended up accepting it. Following the steps and the clues, we ended up in the same village in which the knight NPC lived, and my character decided to ask some help from his knight friend, and he was acting very weird about it. I tried some insight checks and failed with a natural frickin' 1, so I couldn't know what happened and gave up on the lead, but this warlock friend of mine didn't enjoy the results, so he put truth serum in the NPC's water canteen against my will, and we waited. The NPC eventually drank it and came to us, finally taking his helmet off to reveal that he was actually the lost daughter who ran away from his abusive family that wouldn't let her follow her dreams since she was born a woman and end up in the village as a knight, disguising herself as a male so her family wouldn't find out. But not only that, she also revealed she was deeply in love with my paladin and wished for them to have something serious.
A woman!
You've betrayed me. I thought you were a hot femboy twink! Damn it! Me and the warlock looked at each other, and we simply held our laughter, and I started to gently dismiss the girl, saying that God was my life, and I served it, and only it. The NPC and the DM were a little flabbergasted by my reaction, but they accepted, and the party came up with a plan to fake her death so she could be herself, and we could earn the money. At the end of the session, the DM asked me if I was alright, and if I was uncomfortable with the situation. I laughed and explained that my character was actually gay, and the DM was really relieved because he thought he didn't understand or invalidated an ace character. In the end, I was a little sad because my secret is now known by the DM, but I still have plans for this character. Sorry if my story doesn't fit, I just thought it was really fun and wanted to talk about it. Dude, this was great. I will say that I think you should be honest up front about character orientations, especially where romance is a possibility. Like, I was pretty open with, for example, Yumi in the 10th Tomb being asexual, but still romantically interested in both genders. I wanted people to know that, just so there wasn't any, like, miscommunication over who she was interested in. It also helps curb some DM anxiety, but the fact that the DM asked you if you were okay, I mean, dang, that's just good DMing. Man, after the last story, I'm glad to see some wholesome gays around here. This happened over 10 years ago now, and honestly, I'd pretty much forgotten about it for quite a while. But then, there it was, bubbling back to the surface of my mind. And now that I'm older, wiser, I realize how bad and weird it was. The relevant cast? Usuran, another player character, pretty much just along for the ride on the whole thing. Myself, as someone who's fairly new to TTRPGs. Game Master, the one that created this crapshoot. There were others, but they don't really play a part in the major incidents, and I've since forgotten what their characters were anyways. Now, I'll go ahead and start this off by saying that I was the only woman in this group. I'm sure you can guess where this is going. Our little band started in Vodachi. Thank you for the pronunciation guide. Not that I needed it. I did that all on my own. This is 7th Sea's version of Italy, with a new pope that's going to be decided on. We were tasked with trying to get one particular guy to gain that title, but he had some stiff competition. So we decided that he needed a miracle. No, literally. We thought up some harebrained scheme to have him rescue some orphans from a burning orphanage. Yes, insert your joke about burning orphanages here. Hey, we don't joke about burning orphanages at Crispy's Tavern. We take it very seriously, okay? It's a monthly competition.
Yes! Thank you everyone. I want to dedicate this orphanage burning to my mother.
Look, we wanted to make it look like he and the children were able to get out unscathed, as if the fire had not wished to harm them. The plan and preparation was actually pretty good, and all of it looked like it was going to work out. That was until my character failed to convince the children to leave the building before the fire started, and then failed my throw roll to get rid of what was supposed to be a smoke bomb, but wound up being more deadly. I ended up killing a couple children. Yeah, you know, it just happens sometimes. Hey, all in all, the rest of the children got out safely, and the guy we were trying to make look good ended up saving our hides and looking good anyway, though not quite as miraculously as I had intended. Later, our group was approached by an Usuran mage. Apparently, the children that accidentally killed were Usuran, and the GM had the mage give my character an eye for an eye ultimatum. Either we kill you, or you get freaky with the Usuran in your party and make more Usuran children to replace the ones you killed. What the fuck did I just read? Yeah, yikes. At the time, I thought this was a little extreme, but I didn't really see a problem with it because of the bad relationship I was in. Back then, I was, shall we say, blind to a lot of red flags. Honestly, I think I was partly in denial because I was so happy to be out of the house, interacting with other people without my now ex being there. Usurin seemed a little weirded out, you know, by the sudden turn, but just sort of shrugged it off. My character didn't really want children, especially not at that point since adventuring with kids isn't exactly easy, but it was either that or be killed, so she went along with it. The adventures continue, but every now and then the GM would now roll to see whether my character had gotten pregnant or not. I'm thankful that he didn't really go into detail about it, but I do seem to remember points where he would have us try for a baby in game. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but looking back on it, it just makes my skin crawl since none of this was discussed beforehand or at all to make sure I was just okay with it. That's not the worst of it though. Oh yes, it gets better. Later on in the campaign, we went to Usura for some reason and wound up delving into a frozen lake where an ancient race with technology far beyond anything in that world. Think the Sirneth in Elder Scrolls? Who are they? Oh, they're the 7th Sea race. I think this person meant to write the Dwemer. So no doubt you're just gonna see some crazy machines. Right? People have been disappearing, and we were tasked with finding out what had happened to them. Turns out that this ancient race was using humans as cattle for food and such, complete with herds and breeding stocks, the lattermost of which the DM did describe, where the women were held in position by a device to make the breeding male do his...
Oh my god, why would you make me read that? Like, what is wrong with you? Hello, my son. Oh my god. God, how are you doing? I sense that your heart is imbalanced, thrown off by turmoil. Yeah, I mean, I read something today. Something that probably was not for my eyes, or anyone's eyes, really. You must purge your mind and bring balance to your spirit. But God, I wasn't the one who wrote it. I mean... It does not matter. Your mind has been darkened. You know what you must do. I understand. I know what I have to do. New Ghost of Tsushima playthrough! Ah!
1 week later.
Now I need to think about the human breeding farms again, don't I?
During our sneaking, we got caught and wound up in a fight to escape this ancient race. We didn't exactly want to become the newest addition to their herds, but the ancient race kept using some kind of pheromone to turn the male party members' attention to me. You know, being the only female human in the room with them. Thankfully, the other party members actively and successfully rolled to resist, so it didn't turn to the absolute horror of what it could have been. Our party got there somehow, but it was a close call. Since it was so long ago, a lot of the details are fuzzy. I'm sure there was more incidents and red flags, but even just remembering the things I mentioned makes me shudder. I have no idea why I didn't see the problem with it back then. TLDR, Game Master forces my female character to make babies with a male character as recompense for an accident, then sends the party into a place with the baddies who use sex pheromones on the male player characters to make me a distraction during a fight. Did you not want to write about the breeding stocks in the TLDR? Because that's definitely something I would mention. But you know, I get it. I understand. I don't want to talk about that ever again either. Look, I understand that some people really love like uber grim dark fantasy and all that stuff, but a lot of people don't. My world's pretty grim and gory and often bleak, but not like this. Not in a way that makes my friends this viscerally uncomfortable. Yeah, grim stuff is obviously going to invoke some of that dark, hopeless feeling, but this is definitely different from that. This isn't like Soma or Game of Thrones. This is like a smut film that no one wants to be a part of. I'm sure there are some players out there that would enjoy this kind of fantasy, but you gotta make sure that your players enjoy this kind of fantasy. Some GMs get so wrapped up in their own personal kink that they don't really think that part through, do they? you know what this is? I think it's a wrap. If you guys enjoyed, then you might enjoy this episode of RPG Horror Stories, where we cover a dude who is straight out of Yandere Simulator. Ugh. It's linked in the cards. But before you go, please do leave a like on this one and subscribe to Crispy's Tavern so you don't miss any of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, you can go down in the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment toxic and gay to let me know you made it to the end of the video. Hey, by the way, if you have your own horror stories, you can send them directly to us. There's an email down in the description down below. Send your stories our way for a chance to be featured in one of these videos. But hey, even if you don't have any stories, in essence, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you all next time. Farewell.
Cultural, ethnic background, but cultural, ethnic, questionable cultural background. Hey man, it's not for me to question your class of questionable cultural background.